He admits they have to do better. It's not possible for them to do any worse, Mr. Speaker. The reality is today we learned that inflation is again on the march. All 4 measures of inflation are above Bank of Canada's targets. 2 are outside of and above the acceptable range. Food price inflation is rising 2 times the rate that Bank of Canada targets. No wonder we have 2 million people lined up at food banks every single day. This inflation has exploded since this Prime Minister doubled the deficit. Will he reverse his inflationary deficit and taxes in this coming budget?
The tension in Parliament today wasn't just political, it was economic fire. The kind that burns through wallets, grocery bills, and the patience of millions of Canadians already struggling to make ends meet. Inflation, the word that's been haunting kitchen tables across the country, is once again on the march. And this time, even the Bank of Canada can't hide behind calm forecasts or optimistic promises. All 4 measures of inflation have now crossed the bank's own targets. 2 of them, not just above target but outside the acceptable range. Food prices rising twice as fast as the Bank of Canada's ideal rate. It's no longer an abstract number buried in a financial report, it's the empty fridge, the skipped meals, and the growing line outside food banks where over 2 million people now stand every single day. And today, the opposition didn't hold back. They went straight for the jugular, accusing the government of fueling this crisis through ballooning deficits and reckless spending. Will the Prime Minister reverse his inflationary deficit and taxes in this coming budget? The opposition leader demanded, his voice echoing across the chamber. The tone wasn't just political theater, it was desperation dressed as fury. The finance minister fired back, defending her government with the confidence of a shielded insider. She cited the International Monetary Fund, claiming even the IMF's Director General praised Canada's fiscal position, placing it alongside Germany as one of the G7's best-managed economies. Germany and Canada stand up in that regard, she said proudly, insisting that the government is using its fiscal space wisely to navigate tough global times. But the opposition wasn't buying a single word. Fiscal space, the leader shot back, leaning into the microphone with a mix of disbelief and anger. Single mothers who can't afford groceries have no space left at all. His words cut through the chamber.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
This government is forcing Canadians to spend 70% more on the Canada Revenue Agency, and for what? Only 15% of calls are answered on time, and when they are, there's an 83% chance the answer is wrong. It was a brutal line, one that resonated because it's true. Canadians are paying more but getting less. More taxes, more bureaucracy, more government, and yet, the services they rely on seem to crumble faster each year. The finance minister's rebuttal came quickly, defensive but fiery. She accused the Conservatives of fighting against every major social program meant to help Canadians: dental care, the National School Food Program, pharmacare. At every step of the way, she said, her voice rising, they fought against programs that would support Canadians in times of need. We will not take lessons from those Conservatives. But the energy in the room shifted again, because slogans don't pay bills, and for many Canadians, patience has run out. The opposition leader rose again, shaking his head, saying, "Another day, another costly slogan." The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was explosive. Because outside Parliament, people are tired of hearing about plans and spaces. They want results. And then, the debate took a darker turn, from inflation to unemployment. From food prices to factory floors. Today, the opposition leader said gravely, 1,200 workers at the Ingersoll Cami plant learned they would lose their jobs, after the Prime Minister promised he would keep them. They now join 2,000 workers in Brampton, and many more in Oshawa. How does the Prime Minister look these workers in the eyes after betraying them? The word betrayal hung in the air like smoke. The Minister of Industry stepped in, insisting that the government is fighting. Every single day, she listed meetings with the GM CEO, the Unifor Union leader, Ontario's Premier Doug Ford, and Minister Vic Fedeli. "We're putting in place a response group," she said.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr. Speaker. At every every step of the way, they fought against dental care, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against farmer care, Mr. Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against the programs that would support Canadians in time of need, Mr. Speaker. No one on this side of this House will tell us what to do. We're going to fight for Canadians. We're going to make Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
We will make sure we fight for these jobs. But the opposition didn't hold back. Talk, 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 he fired back. You talk to this person and talk to that person, and yet nothing gets done. Canadians are tired of talk. They want action. They want jobs. The frustration in his voice was more than political posturing. It was the echo of every laid-off worker staring at a mortgage payment, every family wondering how to pay the grocery bill. The government had promised an all-in Canada supply chain. They even gave GM $250 million in taxpayer money to protect jobs that are now gone. And for those workers, the response group is not a solution, it's a headline. Another committee, another meeting, another promise. The minister tried to balance the damage by listing new jobs, 150 in Sino, 700 at AstraZeneca, 500 at Ferrero in Ontario, and smaller numbers in potash and energy. She claimed it as proof that Canada's economy was growing, that the government was building something stronger. But the numbers didn't land with impact. Because for every handful of new jobs announced, hundreds more are being lost, and this time, in industries that once defined Canada's middle class. The message Canadians are hearing now is painfully clear. The government's words sound polished, but the reality is raw. Inflation keeps climbing, jobs keep disappearing, and the gap between political rhetoric and real life keeps widening. Parliament may still be divided by party lines, but Canadians are united by exhaustion. And as the debate raged on, one thing became undeniable: this wasn't just another day in the House of Commons. It was a mirror of the country's breaking point. The clash inside Parliament might sound like noise to some, but to millions of Canadians watching from their homes, it feels like déjà vu. Another argument, another set of promises, another day when the people shouting inside those marble walls seem painfully distant from the people struggling outside them. For months, the government has painted a picture of progress, of a Canada leading the G7, creating jobs, and investing in the future. But the future doesn't pay today's bills. When grocery prices are doubling and rent is swallowing paychecks whole, optimism starts to feel like mockery. The truth is, the inflation storm that began as a ripple during the pandemic has turned into a tidal wave. Every family feels it, at the checkout counter, at the gas pump, in the monthly mortgage payment that somehow keeps climbing even as wages stay frozen. And while the government celebrates fiscal space, Canadians are scraping the bottom of their wallets, wondering how much longer they can hold on. The opposition's fury isn't just political theater anymore. It's the reflection of growing anger across the country, from single parents skipping meals so their kids can eat, to workers who've lost their jobs in factories that were once the pride of Canadian manufacturing. When the leader of the opposition called out the Prime Minister for betraying auto workers, it wasn't just an attack, it was a statement that hit a nerve. Because these are the people who built Canada's economy. Generations of skilled hands in plants from Oshawa to Ingersoll, now replaced by pink slips and press releases. The government's defense, though passionate, fell flat. We are fighting for every job, said the industry minister. We are holding companies accountable. But after so many broken promises, words have lost their value. It's not enough to fight, people want to win. And right now, it feels like Canada is losing.
Tell you how the Prime Minister how he will deal with the auto sector. He will look at the auto workers in the eyes and he will say, we will fight for your jobs. And that's exactly what we're doing. Every single day, we're negotiating back in Washington, but also, this is important to say that I met this morning with the Canadian CEO of GM. I was in conversation with the head of the labor union of Unifor, and I also talked to Doug Ford, and I talked to Vic Fideli. And you know what? We're putting in place a response group. We will make sure that we fight for these jobs. We need to make sure that...
Behind the speeches and applause, there's something deeper, a collapse of trust. A growing sense that no matter who stands at the podium, the outcome never changes. Taxes rise, costs climb, and accountability vanishes into committees and consultations. It's not that Canadians don't want to believe. They've heard every promise before: jobs protected, inflation controlled, services improved. But when the Auditor General reports that only 15% of calls to the Canada Revenue Agency are even answered on time, and 83% of those answered are wrong, how can anyone believe the system still works? The opposition's words, sharp and relentless, painted the government as disconnected, a ruling elite quoting international organizations while ignoring empty fridges at home. Your banker friends in Washington may think you have fiscal space, he thundered, but the single mothers who can't afford groceries have none at all. That line stuck. Because it wasn't just an argument, it was truth wrapped in outrage. And while the finance minister defended her record by listing social programs like dental care and pharmacare, the real question Canadians are asking is simpler: if these programs are helping, why does everything feel worse? There's no denying that the global economy is in turmoil. Every nation is struggling to balance spending with survival. But Canadians aren't just looking for someone to explain the problem, they want someone to fix it. The auto job crisis became the breaking point of the debate. The opposition accused the government of handing over hundreds of millions to corporations like GM with no strings attached, only to watch those same companies lay off thousands of workers. How do you look them in the eye? The leader demanded. The question hung heavy, unanswered.
She announced just now that she talked to this person, and she talked to that person, and she talked to this other person, and she talked, and she talked, and they talk, and they talk, and nothing gets done, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are tired of talk. They want their job. This government, for this Prime Minister, looked these workers in the eye and said he would negotiate a win, that he would protect auto jobs, that there would be an all-in-Canada supply chain that would keep them working. They even gave $250 million tax dollars to GM for this plant. And now those workers don't know how they're going to pay their bills. How does this government explain the broken promise and betrayal?
And then, almost like a reflex, the minister started listing new jobs. 150 here, 700 there. It was meant to sound reassuring, but instead it felt hollow. Because these weren't the same jobs that were lost. They weren't in the same communities. They didn't belong to the same people. The opposition was quick to strike back: they talk and talk but nothing gets done. It's a line that summed up not just the debate, but the mood of the nation. Behind every number lies a story. A mother choosing between rent and groceries. A father packing up his locker after 20 years at a plant. A student watching tuition rise faster than wages. These aren't statistics, they're lives unraveling under policies that seem written for someone else's reality. And as the session ended, applause and laughter filled the chamber, but outside, the silence was deafening. Because Canadians don't have the luxury of applause. Their reality is lived in grocery aisles, gas stations, and job centers. The message from this fiery exchange wasn't about who won the argument, it was about who's losing the fight. And right now, it's ordinary Canadians. The ones paying the price for political theater and economic mismanagement. Both sides had their moment, the government standing tall behind international praise and social programs, the opposition hammering down on inflation, taxes, and broken promises. But beyond the slogans and talking points, one fact remains unshakable: the cost of living in Canada has spiraled out of control, and no amount of political spin can hide that truth. As Parliament adjourned, the cameras faded and the lights dimmed, but the real story continued, in every household where anxiety has replaced comfort, and hope feels more like memory than reality.
For these jobs, and we will hold the companies to account.
That's right.
That being said, let me talk to you about important jobs. 150 new jobs in St. Bruno at Alstom, 700 new jobs at AstraZeneca,
Here, here.
500 new jobs at Ferrero in Ontario, K&S Potash, 50 new jobs, Hitachi Energy, 500 new jobs. This government is building a strong Canadian economy.
Inflation is more than a number now. It's a crisis of confidence, of leadership, of faith in the promise that working hard in this country still means something. And for millions watching tonight, the question lingers louder than ever: If this is the government's idea of fiscal success, what does failure even look like?
Canada debates.